I stumbled upon my wife holding hands with another man during what was supposed to be a routine lunch break. It was one of those forgettable Tuesdays, dull, dragging, the kind of day where everything feels like it's moving in slow motion. For Marcus Hale, a reliable project coordinator at a fast-paced software consulting firm, the morning had been overwhelming, packed tight with conference calls, code reviews, and client updates. By midday, he was worn thin, his head pounding, and his inbox a chaotic mess of red flags and unread messages. He needed out, not just a bite at his desk, but actual space to breathe. So, without giving it much thought, he silenced his phone, grabbed his car keys, and drove. No destination in mind, just a spontaneous escape. His hands on the wheel moved almost instinctively, guiding him to a long-forgotten part of the city. Wedged between a tired florist and an aging used bookstore stood a familiar little cafe, the Willow Bean. He hadn't stepped inside in years. This was the place where he and Serena used to spend slow, dreamy Sunday mornings, back when life felt light and their marriage was still bathed in warmth. A flicker of something bittersweet crossed his face as he pushed open the door. The scent inside wrapped around him like an old memory, fresh coffee, vanilla, and something tender he couldn't quite name. The barista didn't recognize him, but the cafe hadn't changed a bit. Same cozy booths, same smooth jazz floating in the background. Marcus ordered a turkey pesto panini and an iced tea before sliding into a seat near the front window. He exhaled, hoping to soak in a rare moment of silence. While he waited, he half-heartedly checked his emails, his eyes occasionally drifting to the movement outside. Then, something caught his attention, a couple across the street. A woman with familiar auburn waves wearing a patterned blue dress. Her hand curled naturally around a man's arm as they strolled, laughing and leaning close to one another like they belonged there. For a second, his mind refused to process what he was seeing. But there was no denying it. It was Serena. His wife. His breath hitched. Time seemed to crawl. He blinked once, twice, but the image didn't change. She was supposed to be at her architecture firm across town. Yet here she was, in the middle of the day, walking closely with a man Marcus had never seen before. Tall. Confident. Well-dressed. Smiling that kind of smile Marcus hadn't seen on Serena's face in what felt like forever. They stopped just outside the cafe. Their faces close. Intimate. Then she leaned in and kissed him on the cheek, resting her head lightly against his shoulder. The sound around Marcus disappeared. All he could hear was the loud, brutal pulse in his ears. There was no benign explanation. No version of this scene that made sense in any innocent way. Still, a desperate whisper inside him clung to hope. Maybe it's not what it looks like. Maybe there's more to the story. But his chest told him the truth, something deep and undeniable had broken. Leaving his untouched lunch behind, Marcus pulled out some cash, dropped it on the table, and quietly slipped outside. Staying far enough to avoid being seen, he followed them. They strolled without urgency, eventually slipping into a boutique just down the block. Marcus hovered near the window, careful not to draw attention. Inside, he watched Serena hold up dresses to her body while the man gave feedback, smiling, nodding, touching her lower back in a way that made Marcus' stomach tighten. This wasn't a colleague. This wasn't a friend. This was something more. When they exited, shopping bag in hand, they didn't hesitate. They crossed the street and walked directly into the entrance of a nearby boutique hotel. The revolving door spun behind them, and just like that, they vanished inside. No hesitation. No signs of guilt. No backward glance. Marcus stood alone on the sidewalk, rooted to the spot, the world still moving around him like nothing had changed. But for him, everything had. His legs felt like they'd vanished beneath him. The truth hit like a crash, sudden, violent, undeniable. The woman he had envisioned a future with, the partner he had shared dreams and a home with, had been living a double life, and he had stumbled into it purely by chance. That evening, Serena welcomed him as if nothing had changed. A familiar kiss brushed his cheek, a casual "hey, babe," followed by an offer to warm up leftovers from the night before. Marcus stood still, watching her move through their kitchen, softly humming to herself, the same woman he had seen disappear into a hotel with another man just hours earlier. But he said nothing. Not yet. He needed more than suspicion. He needed certainty, evidence so clear that lies couldn't survive it. Answers she wouldn't be able to dance around or dress up. So, against everything he thought he was capable of, Marcus hired a private investigator. The weeks that followed tested every piece of him. Each time Serena left with a vague explanation, a late meeting, a site visit, a girls' night, Marcus felt another unseen wound open inside his chest. But he held it in. He played his part with quiet precision, never revealing what he knew or feared. Then, one evening, the investigator returned with a sealed manila envelope. Marcus couldn't bring himself to tear it open right away. He waited. He waited until darkness settled over the house and Serena had gone to bed. Under the amber glow of the lamp in his study, he slowly laid out the contents, printed photos, hotel receipts, detailed surveillance notes. Julian Maddox. That was his name. A fellow architect who had recently transferred from another branch. According to the report, their relationship had been going on for nearly 4 months. They had taken weekend getaways, stayed at boutique hotels, and exchanged intimate messages filled with pet names and shared inside jokes. There was no ambiguity. It was all right there in front of him. Marcus didn't sleep that night. At dawn, Serena shuffled into the kitchen wearing her robe, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Marcus was already seated at the table, a folder resting in front of him. His voice was steady, calm. "We need to talk." She froze mid-step. "Okay, what's wrong?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he opened the folder and slid it across the table. She stared at it for a moment before opening it, slowly flipping through the photos and documents. The blood drained from her face. Her fingers trembled. "I can explain," she murmured, voice breaking. "Don't," Marcus replied, shaking his head. "Not yet. Just tell me why." Her gaze dropped to her lap. "I don't know. It wasn't supposed to happen. It didn't mean to become anything. I felt alone. We've been distant." "That's not an excuse," he said quietly, his voice tight. "You could have come to me. You could have ended it. But instead, you chose to lie. For 4 months. Serena's tears fell fast, but Marcus remained still. He didn't feel rage or sorrow, just an empty, echoing ache, like standing in the ashes of something already burned to the ground. That night, he packed a bag and left. A friend offered their guest room, and Marcus didn't hesitate. Within days, he had filed for divorce. The wound was too deep, the betrayal too layered to ignore. Serena tried to reach him, texts, calls, voicemails, even tearful visits to his office. But Marcus never responded. The house they once called home now felt like a shrine to lies, and he had no desire to return to it. In the months that followed, he began the slow, painful work of rebuilding. He threw himself into his job, picked up weekend hiking, and joined a local photography group. Bit by bit, he started rediscovering the parts of himself he'd lost somewhere inside the routines of marriage. Some nights were heavy. Loneliness crept in like a fog. But gradually, the pain dulled, and his sense of self began to return. One crisp fall afternoon, camera in hand, Marcus stood beneath a canopy of golden leaves in a quiet park. He watched as a father spun his young daughter in a circle, both of them laughing freely, their joy carried on the wind. Something stirred in Marcus, not grief, but something gentler. Something closer to hope. He smiled, genuinely, fully, for the first time in what felt like ages. This wasn't the story Marcus ever imagined living. But it had become one of resilience, hard truths, and quiet healing. In losing a love he thought was unbreakable, he discovered something far more essential: the strength to choose himself. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something more honest than anything he'd had before.